I've got an idea. Happy hobby. I'm David Gonson, if you're a sports car collector and you're working with a limited budget, that's what we do here. Today, I'm talking about an idea I've had. Now, it's not a groundbreaking idea by any means, and really it's just something that it's an idea for how I can collect cards going forward, doing something a little different than what I've done in the past. As you can see up here, I have my 36 card displays. There's basketball, football, and baseball over here. And basically, they're filled up with 36 cards of 36 players. The best card I can get for the 36 players who I believe are worthy of being in my display. Now, obviously, Babe Ruth would be worthy of that one, but I can't afford that. But they're good cards up there nonetheless. And but it's only a single card. Like, I like to collect the best card of that one player. And then I use any other cards I have of his, I sell to make sure I get the best card for him. So I can, say I want to upgrade. Say for instance, I had a 1968, I believe, Topps Pete Rose card, slab. So I took that card, sold it, and turned it into, I have a 1964 Pete Rose slab now. So you upgrade that way, and it helps you kind of streamline your collection. And I don't have 1,500 cards of the same guy that I'm trying to jam into these displays or anything like that. But something did dawn on me. A lot of people say, a Yankees fan. They're Mickey Mantle collectors. Or maybe they're a Yankees fan, maybe they're Reggie Jackson collectors. Or maybe it's a Cardinals fan. He collects Stan Musial cards. Or a Dodgers fan, and he collects Sandy Koufax cards. So it dawned on me, in my background, I grew up in New York, so I was a Yankees fan until I was about 9 or 10 years old. We moved to Florida. I didn't have exposure to Yankees games anymore, really, except for national TV, which it was a lot. But they also, in the 80s, they started to become not so great, so they weren't on national TV so much. But TBS, the Braves, and WGN, the Cubs, those were on. So I started becoming fans of those. Well, then eventually Central Florida got a team, or actually Florida got a team in the Marlins, and then Central Florida eventually got a team in 1998. The Tampa Bay Devil Rays came into existence, so I became a Rays fan, basically. Well, for me to collect specific players from the Rays, it only goes so far back. I mean, a Quentin McCracken collection, it's not too deep, you know what I'm saying? It's not too big. So, what I'm getting to is, I started thinking it would be nice to go back and collect some vintage cards of a great player, but just one player, and get a base card from all of his years. Just one card. Slabbed. I would like to get them slabbed. Eventually all slabbed at a specific, maybe it's a decade, the decade that he's in, maybe a PSA in that decade, or SGC, whatever, that numbered grade. So if it's a 50s card, it'd be a 5, 60s, it'd be a 6. So I'm thinking that would be kind of cool. So then I thought, all right, well, if I'm going to do that, which player am I going to do? So now I started thinking about, there's a lot of great players, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Roberto Clemente. Man, I'm not going to be able to afford those guys' early cards. Those guys' numbers are insane. Those 4 are untouchable as far as I'm concerned. So then I start thinking, okay, what's the next tier that maybe I could dip into? So it has to be players. So I'm asking you, I'm talking with you about this. Let me know what you think. At the end, I'm going to give you who I think is going to be the player I'm going to target here. But first, I want you to understand. So not somebody that it's going to be $1 billion card, like a Mickey Mantle or Hank Aaron. Also somebody who has a bunch of cards. So not somebody as much as I love Jackie Robinson, his cards are going to be super expensive. And a lot of his cards are pre-1956. So to get a bunch of his cards, there's only so many cards to get of his. See what I'm saying? So usually what I'm thinking is it's going to be somebody that started in the 50s or the 60s and had base cards going all the way through their career that I can go back and get. Now also, I plan on adding on to this, just getting top-loaded cards, or, cards, raw cards of their inserts from later years. Like maybe it's a Topps Archives card. Not necessarily get graded, but just have those cards because they're pretty cool as well, right? So let's first talk about the players. Al Kaline, he's certainly an option. He's a Hall of Famer. Frank Robinson. Now there's somebody that really jumped out at me on three, his numbers retired by three different teams, three different organizations, has a statue in three different cities. That's pretty awesome. Sandy Koufax, he's a pitcher, and I was never a Dodgers fan, but Sandy Koufax, one of the all-time greatest pitchers, and he has a nice limited group of cards to collect from, so that's not a bad one. Ernie Banks, another one. Now, he's close to the legendary status, but surprisingly, his cards are actually pretty affordable. Now, outside of his rookie card, which is expensive but attainable. Who else? Pete Rose, the Hit King. The problem with Pete Rose is, he's got a billion cards, and they could all be pretty cheap throughout the 80s. He goes all the way through the 80s, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He has that one rookie card with the floating heads. Such an ugly card and so expensive. It's tough to justify buying that card for me. Secondly, about Pete Rose, he's just kind of a putz. Like, he just doesn't seem like a nice guy. Any interview you see of him, now I get it. He's soured. He's grumpy. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He's banned from baseball, all that stuff. He's just not somebody you root for. I'm not a Reds fan, never been a Reds fan or anything, or a Phillies fan, but just he's not somebody to root for. So it's tough to be like, I'm going to go collect all the Pete Rose cards. So we move on. Nolan Ryan. Now that's an option, although his rookie card, super expensive. And again, he shares the rookie card with someone else. But I do live in Central Texas, and the Round Rock Express is our local minor league baseball team, and he's a part owner of that. Statue out front, Nolan Ryan and everything. He has a barbecue store right there. He sells, it's like a butcher store. I forget what it's called, but it's something awesome, and we've gotten some food there. It's pretty good. Johnny Bench, another good one. Now, I was a catcher in high school. Now, this is an option. While I wasn't a Reds fan, I did respect Johnny Bench, and he was pretty awesome. Reasonably priced cards because he's a catcher and they're not super collectible. I don't know. That's one to think about. Reggie Jackson, I mentioned earlier. The thing with Reggie Jackson, kind of like Pete Rose, he's difficult to root for. Like, getting a bunch of Reggie Jackson cards is basically something you just save for like the Yankees and maybe the A's fans. Let them deal with that. Brooks Robinson, Carl Yastrzemski, both of these guys they have 3 billion base cards basically, and they're both amazing players, and they both are kind of boring. Not much personality. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what that's the realm I'm looking at. It's one player from this group of players whose base cards I can go back and collect. Now I'm talking about through the years. Like, I could go to a card show and be like, oh, I do need a 68, or I need a 1974 of this, or whatever. And just have a card that someone like MJ Family Time Cards, Josh Scarberry, they collect Lou Burdett cards because they're related to him. So that's kind of cool to go to a show and look for Lou Burdett cards. That's pretty cool. So that's what I'm kind of thinking of is along those lines, and somebody who I don't have to spend a ton of money outside of their early cards. Don't have to spend too much money to get these cards. So that's what I'm asking you, what do you think? So I'll give you my opinion who I think I'm going to collect. Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. And the reason being is, like I said, I grew up watching WGN. I was a huge Cubs fan in the 80s. Mark Grace was my favorite player in the 80s. Sean Dunston was great. Shawan Dunston, Mark Grace. That team was awesome. Ryan Sandberg went to Wrigley Field in 1990. Saw the All-Star game, watched or saw the Home Run Derby. Sorry, before the All-Star game, had a great time. So I loved everything about the Cubs and Wrigley Field and all of that. And I became someone who followed Ernie Banks. He's Mr. Cub. That's his nickname, Mr. Cub. Hey, let's play too. I mean, the guy's someone you like, someone you root for. So I think that's where I'm leaning towards, is going with Mr. Ernie Banks. This guy right here. I even have a starting lineup of this guy. An old starting lineup. I mean, it just makes sense at this point. Now, I do have one, I think I have a 1955 Ernie Banks there. It's like a 2.5 SGC. I also have some raw cards, a bunch of raw cards. But I think that's what I might do, is start locking down some Ernie Banks cards and just go through all of his career all the way through. I think it's 1970, 71. So that's a nice group of base cards. Now I'm talking about also the All-Star cards. I want to get the All-Star cards, the base cards, maybe some of the, sometimes they do like league leaders or highlights, career highlight cards, something like that. I might do that. And then fast forward, like I said, another couple decades, Topps archives, maybe some inserts. Upper Deck had some cool inserts. Maybe there's some awesome inserts for Ernie Banks that I can check out. But anyway, I want to know what you think. And also, have you started your own personal collection about a specific player? Your PCP, personal collection player. Hey, I like that. So do you have somebody that you collect specifically? What do you do? What are some of your tips for me in going and getting specifically this player? I'm sure Ernie Banks, it's going to end up being, say 20, 30 base cards. But through the years, I can kind of slowly pick these up, and I do have some already. What are some suggestions? Now, here's what I was thinking. What would be cool? A cool idea. What if there was, maybe there was a group where we each named the player that we're after. And as the rest of us come across these cards of these different players, we can let each other know, hey, just so you know, this guy's selling this card over here, pretty cheap, pretty nice deal if you want to get in on it. Or this he wants to do a trade, he's got this guy, and I know you like him. That'd be a cool thing to do. So right now, Substack, on our chat on Substack at ganas.substack.com, we do that. We chat on there. We talk about different things we're collecting, different cards we're picking up, different cool ideas we did this past week. What were the autograph cards you've picked up in your card collecting career? So we chat about stuff like that. So I want to know from you, is that something you think you'd be interested in? Maybe we open up a Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheets that we all share, and list who we have and who we want and all that good stuff. It's just a blossoming of an idea. So maybe there's something you can add to it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is Ernie Banks the guy I should be collecting? What do you think about that? You know my background now. You know my history. I'm probably going to have to get another one of these guys and board up this window just so I can put my Ernie Banks cards up there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Whatever you do, though, have a happy hobby.